Thank you for attending this evening's Special Education Task Force Community Info Meeting, presented to you by Torrance Council of PTAs, also referred to as TCPTA or Council. I'm Jan Hirata, this year's TCPTA president, and it is my honor to introduce you to Cherie Doreen, our Special Education Task Force Chair, Nanette Nolan, TCPTA First Vice President of Leadership, and Terry Reagans, TCPTA Fifth VP of Health. Special thank you to the TUSD administration and teachers, PTA leaders and families and guardians who are joining us tonight. So, the California State PTA's mission is to positively impact the lives of all children and families. Most of you are probably familiar with the PTA unit at your school, but you may be wondering, who's Torrance Council of PTAs? So let me briefly explain. Within each of Torrance Unified's 30 preschool, elementary, middle, and high schools, we have a PTA unit. For example, Hickory PTA, Kelly Mayor PTSA, etc. TCPTA is a leadership organization which supports all 30 of these PTA units. We provide training and mentorship to the units. In fact, tomorrow evening, we are hosting a training for our PTAs on how to plan inclusive PTA events. We have council programs that support our homeless and foster youth. We provide scholarships to our Torrance High School seniors. We provide family engagement. We develop resource materials such as our diversity, equity, and inclusion toolkit, and so much more. You can go to our website to learn more about us at torrancecouncilofptas.org. And now I'm going to give it to Nan.
So some of the goals for this task force, or actually back up. So what we understood and understand to be the case is that our PTAs work really, really hard. They're volunteer-run nonprofit organizations. We don't come into this job usually knowing much about nonprofits, let alone how to run an entire organization. So we're learning on the job and kind of squeezing that in between family lives and day jobs and life. But we know that not everybody can access the things that we offer in PTA in the same ways. And there's a lot of reasons we understand this to be true, and we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit as well. But the point being that we know that there's an opportunity, a huge opportunity, to really include families that have students with special education, designations, have different needs, disabilities, or whether that's cognitive or intellectual learning disabilities, whether it's mobility challenges. And so we know that we don't know it all. We don't know probably most of what you guys experience and what you need. And so we're really hoping to start this conversation with our entire community, all the stakeholders. As Jan mentioned, we have, folks from the school district, as well as, principals and teachers from our school sites, PTA presidents, and people who, like yourselves, who are parents and guardians, who have children in your lives who you love, who may not be included in the ways in which you would hope to be. And you, as families, may feel that there are some opportunities that are kind of missed. So the whole objective of this task force to start is to do a lot of deep digging and really understand what it is that our families at large need, and understand the different perspectives and barriers for participation. PTAs are amazing. They do some great work on our school campuses and all throughout the state and the nation. But we, again, know that there's a need and there's missed opportunities. So we want to know where that is. And before we get over our skis and start planning and doing all these things, what we really need to do is understand. And that's really where everyone who will participate, which we will talk about more in a bit as well, are really kind of key to how we move forward in this work. We really want to partner with our community members, our family members, our educators, and those who have special experience and expertise in these various fields to help inform our decisions. Jan mentioned a lot of the programs that we do in connection with TUSD, with other organizations across all 30 schools here in Torrance. And so we have deep partnerships that we know we can leverage and really tap into. It's really just kind of trying to answer the big questions, which is what, why, how, who, and all of that good stuff. And we're hoping that all of the feedback and the partnerships and the community helps to inform what we do next. So those are the big goals for now. And what will happen is out of that, we can formulate at least a roadmap or the beginning of a roadmap of where we go next. Some important things to know is the task force is not about school policy or Torrance Unified's policy or ed code. Our work really is limited to the work that we do as a PTA organization, and by extension, the organizations here within Torrance. We also know that some of the limitations that PTAs face and will always continue to face are kind of specific to budgets as well as volunteer base, and honestly, understanding. A lot of people who are involved in PTA are super volunteers. You'll see them in Boy Scouts or Girl Scout meetings. They're also leading Little League teams. And so a lot of times we're kind of stretched thin. And so that I want to be kind of make you guys aware that there are some practical constraints that have always existed and will probably always exist. That's not to say that they're insurmountable, just knowing that they exist in our PTA universe. And although Torrance Council do support, mentor, guide, and provide resources to our units, we can't force them to do anything. Each nonprofit organization, although we are within this large PTA structure and there's rules and guidelines, they're autonomous and they make decisions based on what their school community needs. And they make that in consensus with their board, the members who are part of their association, and of course, their school administration. So really important to know that we couldn't wave a magic wand and force everybody to do the same thing at once. So I just kind of wanted to level set and kind of give those caveats before we moved in too much further. Kick this next piece over to Terry. Apologies, Terry was saying before we got on that her internet was unstable, so hopefully it's not too laggy.
Yeah, actually, in fact, I'm going to turn off my video and hope that helps with it somewhat. Can you guys hear me all right?
Perfect.
All right, so we'll hope that it holds on until I can get through just a little bit about PTA and PTA funding. But I did want to reiterate that the mission of PTA is to try to impact the lives of the students and families that are part of our organization. It is the largest volunteer organization in the nation, which is really wonderful. In fact, in California, in recent past, we've had 6 million members. So we are a very, very active and involved organization. There are several things that I want you to know about PTA. First and foremost, that PTA is not a fundraising organization, even though I'll give you several different goals, many of which do imply and require that we raise funds in order to do things at our schools. One of our jobs on the school campuses is to support the school and the teachers and the staff and the families there. Number two, our job is to supplement what the school district can offer and provide enhancing experiences for our students and our families. Number three, we're there to enrich the school environment as much as we can and add to what students are getting at school. And then lastly, to advocate for the families and students. And that has to do with the PTA things that we are doing. So again, we're not a fundraising organization, but as you can see for any and all of those, it often requires funds in order for activities and events and things to be brought to the school through PTA. So under that funding allocation, we don't actually have a funding allocation unless we have actually raised the funds, but it says fundraising with a purpose, a 3-to-1 rule. I want to mention that that's actually a rule of thumb. It's not an actual rule, because in terms of funding things and fundraising, we actually we must adhere to the legal requirements of a nonprofit organization in the state of California. So in fact, those are the rules and regulations that are most important to us. And one of the primary things is that all of the things that we do in terms of raising funds go back to that charitable entity that we are serving. So that's the 3-to-1 rule. We have one fundraiser, and we recommend that there be 3 activities, events, things brought to the school as a result of that fundraiser. So that's what that means. And the second is that we hope that the activities that are selected serve the broadest range of students and families at the schools, and that they provide the most in terms of bang for the buck for the school and for the students that we're serving. I did want to mention that each school, as Nan said, does their own budget development and review process. And then there's a review from their own executive board at their own PTA, and in conjunction with the principal at that school, they decide what events they want to put forward. And then they take it to the large group or the association at that school, and will vote for it and fund it and hopefully move forward and provide those services and those events and those wonderful things that we know PTAs can bring to schools. So historically, we have actually had little understanding or knowledge about how to actually bring that PTA programming to all segments of our school community. And that's part of the reason to create this task force, is to look at this large faction, these special ed students, or these students that have special needs or whatever they bring to the table, that have not been included up until this point for whatever reason, figure out what those reasons are and try to help to make them, or to make it possible for them to be part of what PTA can offer. So just to lay that groundwork. And lastly, that there is a realization that in order to do that and have that additional group fully included in all that PTA does, is going to require changes in what we are providing, a different focus perhaps, and a different way of doing things, and maybe even more funding, but that we are hopeful that we can make that happen. Okay, and that's it for me.
Thanks, Terry. That was perfect. And again, I'm sure you're like, why are we talking about PTA funding? Because we want you guys to have an awareness of PTAs and kind of what are the things, the pressures or the things that we balance out. So I'm going to kick it over to Cherie to talk about, some of the goals, further about the goals for the task force as they relate to how we can support our units.
Thank you, Nan. Thank you. My name is Cherie Doreen, and I'm been honoured to take on this role as the chairperson for this unit here that we're looking at doing for supporting you. Our goal is really to look at how are your needs being met in the community with your units at the moment. So the first part of that is we need to hear from you. We need to understand, like, where are you feeling right now? Give us some feedback and some guidance, because we can't just go out and say, hey, we're just going to go and provide the solution. We want that to be fully engaged with our community to understand what your needs are. And we want to be able to go out and provide guidance to our PTAs. And PTA as a general, and California State PTA and National PTA have a real focus on having inclusivity in our schools and in our units and in our community as well. So with inclusivity, a lot of guidance is needed. Some people are not aware of how they can be more inclusive. So really wanting to understand how we can connect what you're needing to what's currently being provided, and how do we work together to massage everybody together so that we can build on the strengths of what inclusivity benefits to our community. Wanting to have discussions to make sure that your board is hearing the needs of your students and your school sites. Are you represented on your school board? And is that something we can look at for going forward for your school boards? We want to share insights gathered from our families, what we can use to help. And we also want to look at some of the communities around us. We're very fortunate that our legislation chair, Karen Cull, wrote the inclusive education a resolution this year, and we have some local expertise around that, and together we can use some of those expertise to help us with some of the decisions going forward to help everybody become involved. We want to highlight the resources and the training that we have available for our units, getting participation in each of those units to be able to support our families. We want to produce new resources if there's needs out there that haven't been met, that we feel that you need to have. We want to promote the involvement of your families in our school events. What's prevented you from going to a school event? Or looking at your school sites, are you seeing that other students have been given things and you feel that your community is being left out? Those types of things we need to hear about so that we can facilitate conversation and work together to find solutions for doing that. We want to really be able to be a safe space where we're building a community and where we're also being able to foster some of those discussions with the district if we needed to. We certainly want to involve all partnerships in terms of what we're looking at doing going forward. But we really want your involvement. And so the next step of this is, how do we get your feedback and where do we go to from here?
Nan, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. You guys want me to
This
back
is
up?
Terry. Shireen mentioned a couple of times the school boards. What that means is the school executive board, meaning the group of elected leaders at your PTA that she's talking about. She doesn't literally mean the school board of
not the school
TUSD.
board, sorry.
Yeah,
No,
just
that's
for
a good point of clarification. Yeah, I know. I think when we're in our PTA mode, we have all these, you'd be surprised, so many words, so many
Yes.
acronyms. And then Cherie, I think you were gonna take us home and kind of talking about what this might look
Absolutely.
like in terms of supporting our community.
Absolutely. So with training and support, we do have a number of, firstly, we can't just go out and say, hey, here's this training. We want to know if you want that type of training as well. So through CAPTA, California State PTA, through 33rd District, for which is our district that we joined with, there's a lot of trainings and a lot of community events, and there's a lot of community initiatives. So family engagement is a big focus for California State PTA. How do we engage in our families? And diversity, equity, and inclusion is also another big area of as well as that PTA is looking to do. So how do we make that inclusive to all of our families that may have different needs and who need to feel as part of that community? So understanding where we're at, supporting that inclusion and having that collaboration between all of the parties involved in the school is what we're wanting to do and facilitate here. There's volunteer opportunities. We've been part of the task force, been part of the PTA, understanding what the needs are, and then how do we go out and work with different districts on doing that. So your feedback and insights is going to be what we're looking for. We will be sending out a survey. The next step will be that we'll send the survey out to everybody. We'll get that information back in, and then we'll look at meeting again to collaborate and look at what we're wanting to go forward. So just to give you a little bit of an idea of what some of the other PTAs do in our area. Palos Verdes, for example, their PTA has a group that meets together. They're called coffee chats. They meet online and they sit around, have coffee, and they just talk about different things that are working in their PTAs. Like, we did this particular event and this included our families, or we feel that our kids might need to have a sensory table and want to know how we can raise funds to get those sensory equipments for the children in our school. So we're having a jogathon, and this is how our families were involved in that, and this is what didn't work for us. So some of those coffee chats is something that we could look at doing if that's what we wanted. And we could look at also some of the initiatives that Redondo Beach has as well, which is different sporting events and things like that for our families. But you are going to be key in whatever we do, because what we're wanting to do is collaborate with you, and you're going to be the drivers based on what your needs are in our community. So we'll be sending that survey out in the next 2 weeks. We're going to have another meeting in person on Monday the 18th you're welcome to come and join that meeting and come and talk to us about some of the things that you want. And really, we're at the really initial stages. And so as much as I'd like to wave a magic wand and have all the answers for you today, it's going to be a bit of a slow process as we navigate through everybody's needs as we progress through this. This is very new to PTA. It's new to a lot of PTAs around the state. We haven't really had this type of position set up in a lot of our schools and a lot of our units across the state. But I'm looking forward to us, Torrance, being a leader in the state on how to do this properly. So I think that's it for me. Is there any, Jan, would you like to finish the last part or open it up for Q&A?
Oh, hold on.
I think, Nan, do you have something?
Yeah, sorry. I know, Cherie just stole all my thunder. Just kidding. So as Cherie's already talked about the feedback and insights, and I think we've talked about that kind of start to finish. You guys are really key in helping us decide what we start, where we start and where we go next. And in terms of your individual involvement, I think Cherie also kind of touched on that. You know, not everybody, we can't have a committee of 100 people. Like, that's just madness. But what we are definitely interested in is people who are interested in filling out not just surveys, but focus groups, or sharing additional feedback, or even being able to be a sounding board as we produce things or present plans. So I think that would be really helpful, is kind of hearing and being able to get that feedback from members of the community. We are also really interested in having a diverse group that looks at the needs from a lot of different angles. I mean, there's no surprise here. Teachers are critical. Para-ed's essential. Our administrators are, you know, the folks from our district, our councils, our PTAs, you as family members, our students, everybody is involved and in touching the lives of our students and our families. And so it's really important that we have kind of the broadest network of people working on this, the task force. And we also know too that, you know, a child with autism is going to have separate and different needs from a child with dyslexia, is going to have separate and different needs from a child with, you know, mobility issues or with Down syndrome. So we also are looking intently on finding where are the gaps in our understanding, so we can find folks in our community who would be willing to also kind of lend their lived experience with us. And we'd love to also learn from you guys, you know, if there are resources and content, guest speakers, organizations that you feel are critical and could be key in some of the work that we want to do. And I want to also mention that not everything that you guys may want or need will necessarily be a PTA item that we can, you know, actually act on. And so what do we do with those suggestions? What do we do with those things as they come up? And so we don't know the answers, but we hope that together we'll grow, we'll learn, and we'll kind of move the needle. And so you've heard us kind of tell you our grand plan and share some thoughts and some goals. And now we do want to kind of move on to the Q&A section and be able to allow you guys to kind of ask your questions. And I'm going to go ahead and stop. Well, before I stop recording, do any of my colleagues have anything else they kind of wanted to say to this point?
Yeah, I'll just say lastly, you know, we do want to make sure that we've got a good spread of representation on the committee. As Annette said, you know, we all have different needs for which we're represented in this community, but also we're wanting to have, this is quite cyclic when you have a student in special education, because your needs when you're in elementary school are going to be different to your needs in high school. So we want to make sure that we've got a broad base of students represented, but we want to also make sure that we've got a good range of age groups represented, as well as ensuring that our 4 quadrants that we represent, with north, south, west, and
Central.
Torrance represented as well. So if you are, you know, when you do come back to us, let us know sort of, you know, your age and the location of your school, because I think that's important to ensure that we're looking at all of the communities and not just the communities that speak up the most. So I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Nan, I did want to add, actually, this is Terry, but I'm trying to save my internet, so I'm off again. But I wanted to let you all know where sort of this idea came from, that when I was president, for the first time that I ever remember, we had people come forward at the bike rodeo and say, can my student participate on their adapted bicycle, or can we adapt the bike rodeo to include any kids that are not just regular old kids on bikes, that would require some adaptation and alteration, but could they participate? And I have to say that we were not prepared. We were more than ready to try to figure out how to do that. And this year, in fact, we have modified all of the materials to allow for that, and modified the course and a variety of things. But that's kind of the power I'm hoping that this task force can bring, to say, this is an issue for me and my student with special needs, and what can we do about it, and how can we incorporate them? So I just wanted to let you know this can in fact make change. It already has, even before we formalized this process. Thanks.
No, thank you for that. And I do want to, I thought to myself, don't forget. Yeah, I appreciate Terry was huge in championing this with our board, and the whole board's been really supportive. So I love that. I feel really honored to be with so many people who feel so passionately about doing good things for the community at large. So I'm going to go ahead and, oh, sorry, Jan.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say some words before we go to Q&A,
Yeah.
because I don't want to lose everyone. But so as you've heard tonight, your Torrance Council of PTAs is always looking on how we can grow and expand on how we support our students. Can't do it alone. And you might be wondering how you can help. So the main thing is, when you get that survey, fill it out, because your input is invaluable. Also, if you haven't already, join your school's PTA. PTA membership is year round, so even though we're in March, you can still join your PTA. And then if you have any questions or ideas, or want to be part of a bigger part of this initiative, please reach out. Contact information is here on the screen. And we just hope that we've given you some helpful information, and we look forward to your input and feedback. Thank you for joining us this evening.